Now, my first encounter was when we was running radar missions against, we thought it was against SAC, penetration missions. That's when we had old gap filler radars strung all across the United States, the Dew line, and so forth. Actually, what we were running missions against, or it was UFOs. This was 1950, 51, 53. We was at Warner Robins Air Force Base, temporary duty. We moved the most powerful radar that the government had at that time down there, 2 sets, a search and a height finder. And one day, there was 5 of us on the tower, and I had 7 men. 5 of us was on the tower working, and somebody says, "Look, flying saucers." So we turned around. There's these 3 shining objects sitting out there about a mile, flat on bottom, round on top, luminous shining. That was the Project Blue Book days. Okay, the astrophysicist in charge of investigating that and debunking all these sightings was H.J. Heineke, which later became a friend of mine. He was a technical advisor on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, paid by the government. The government has paid every one of the Spielberg movies that he has made. They have guaranteed if you lose any money on this, we will pay your losses. So far, he hasn't lost any money. So we haven't had to put any money out of Federal Reserve pocket. There's a new one coming out pretty soon, 3 or 4 months, the Roswell incident. Now, it's supposed to be the closest to the truth of what happened down there in 1947 than any they've shown before. They made him the same guarantee. Heineke won't be directing that one as a scientific director because he's dead. But I advise you, if you're interested in it, go see that movie. There's a couple of personal friends of mine that are going to be portrayed in that movie, and I've talked to them. I said, I want to see if you're a nut, you know, if you're going to be, are you a delusion, or you're discredited, Air Force pilot, or what? I want to see how they portray you. Now, they are too, they're interested. But they have interviewed them. So we'll see how much they really put in the movie. When we saw these 3 things, if you're familiar with Warner Robins, they would thin about 9,000 GIs and probably about 20,000 civilians that worked on that base. So we were looking at them. We said, well, now what's Heineke going to say about this? And he said, well, it's swamp gas or it's mass hypnosis, all those suggestions, so on and so forth. That's his standard answer. So, okay, none of that paint's on the radar. So let's go down, turn on the radar, and see if this is going to paint. So we go down, turn on the radar, and we end up building with French doors all the way along one side, so we could open all the doors and see these 3 ships sitting out there. And we was painting them on the radar. So it was okay, turn on the cameras, take the radar pictures, go outside and take the pictures like we're supposed to do. So we did that. They started moving. Now at that time, the radar rotated 4 times per minute. And when they started moving, they moved out horizontally for a while and went up, and they was off the scope within 4 revolutions. At that time, we deemed that to be about 3,300 miles per hour. We had nothing in the Air Force inventory that would go that fast at that time. We had nothing in the inventory that would set still and hover like that either. So then we say, all right, we're going to report this. And we decided, well, we're not going to report this. You know, you're going to be sent over to psychiatrists. Why you want out of the Air Force? And then they keep badgering you, until you say you didn't see nothing and so forth. That was the usual procedure. Or you was threatened if you kept saying you saw something. So we said, all these civilians and all these military, somebody else have seen this. So we're going to see what comes out of the paper. Sure enough, the next day there was hundreds of people that seen these things sitting there and seen them move off. So they called for Heineke, and it comes out, Project Blue Book, the local paper about 3 months later. Yeah, it was swamp gas, all those suggestions, mass hypnosis. And we're sitting there, none of that paint's on radar. So then I got interested in seeing what else the Air Force knew in other reports. Well, I was a CONRAD courier. They carried the war codes that are sent out by the president. If you ever watch the president, there's a warrant officer by his side all the time. He has the launch codes to all the nuclear vehicles. And it's passed down through the Air Force to men. They're always in control of those codes, and you're armed and you're sworn to shoot the other one if he's going to compromise codes. So I had a top cryptographic top secret clearance. So I'd go in the center and I'd watch all these messages come in of all incidents where these UFOs were sighted. And I got to learn, hey, there's a lot of this going on. And then other people that had the same type of clearance, I began to discuss, this with them. And about that time when I'd learned this is when the Air Force decided he knows more than he should know. So we either take care of him or we bring him in on the project. And that's when they offered me the opportunity to go to work on secret projects as far as anti-gravity electromagnetic vehicles. So for years, my job was, like Haneke was as a civilian, mine was as a military investigator, to debunk anybody that had any kind of incident or sighting or so on and so forth. My job was to go see them, convince them this did not happen, so on and so forth. If I couldn't do that, and members of my team couldn't do that, then we turned it over to other people. Their job was to coerce, threaten, or eliminate people that they could not control.